for that. Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome. So this is the Circus Street Performance and Spectacle Project Award 2025 Funding Clinic. A little introduction. Some of you may be familiar with this, but for those of you who are new to our funding programs, we are the Circus Street Performance and Spectacle team, and we are part of the Arts Council. The Arts Council itself, the board of directors of the Arts Council, is a voluntary body of 12 members and a chair appointed by the Minister for Tourism, Culture, Arts, Gaeltacht, Sports and Media. And these council members are appointed for a term of 5 years. We've actually just had a new group of council members join. There is some good representation from our sector in there as well. And if you're interested in who these members are, you can see it on our website. Our work is delivered by the executive, which is the staff, so that would include myself and Ciara, and our director, Maureen Kennelly. I may be pronouncing that wrong, apologies, Maureen. And the different staff across multiple art form specific and operational teams. We also have advisors and assessors who are external consultants, and they review applications, complete assessments, give advice to our teams on policy, and also are out there in the wild going to see your work and reporting back on it to us. There's various different art form teams. We are moving towards having a kind of more cross art form multidisciplinary perspective, and we would see a lot of that in street performance and spectacle in particular. But we have some art form specific teams and then practice specific teams, for example, circus, architecture, dance, but then we would also have arts participation or participatory arts, festivals, young people's arts, art centres, etc., which would be more multidisciplinary in nature. Many of these teams do run their own specific project awards, and we'll look at art form considerations in a moment as well. But just to give you that high level that there's lots of different cogs turning and interacting here in the Arts Council. Who we are. So here we have, I'd like to introduce Ciara, who has just joined our team. Ciara is our officer and is working with us 2 days a week. I am the head of team. Laura Ivers is my name. Many of you might know me already. And I work 2.5 days on the Circus Street Performance and Spectacle team. We also have an advisor, Adam O'Keefe, who many of you may know has come to your work. And he works with us as a consultant, completing our assessments and reporting on work out in the field. Generally, what do we do? Our purpose, as given to us by the government, is to develop the arts. So we work in partnerships with artists and arts organisations, policymakers, and others to build a central place for the arts in Irish life. Our core functions are about stimulating public interest in the arts, promoting knowledge, appreciation, and practice of the arts, assisting in improving standards in the arts, and advising the minister and other public bodies on the arts. So funding is not all that we do, but I know that's why you all are here today and is maybe what's most important for you guys. So we do provide financial assistance, mainly but not exclusively, to artists and organisations. We also support others who develop and promote the arts. We offer advice and information on the arts to government and to others. We publish research and information as an advocate for the arts and artists, in particular for our art form, where we will soon be publishing our street performance and spectacle policy in the coming weeks. But we also recently, in the last couple of years, published an excellent circus building infrastructure report, mapping and looking at all of the building infrastructure for circus and setting recommendations and a vision for the future for circus buildings. And then we also are involved in promoting the arts, so undertaking a range of projects to promote and develop the arts in partnership with others. Maybe a good example of this would be Culture Night, for example, or Creative Schools, where we're bringing arts into schools. Okay, so how do we do it? And why this is important is because what is outlined in all of these artifacts here is what informs our guidelines, which we're about to dive into and which you'll be responding to if you're applying to the project award. So all of our funding programs and art form specific policies are informed by our current 10-year strategy. We'll be moving into making a new one soon, but we're still coming to the end of making great artwork. The core elements of making great artwork are the artist and audiences. They're seen as the ultimate kind of core of the work that we do. So some of our programs, such as the Bursary Award or the Agility Award, they're for supporting artists specifically. And then when we look at something like the Project Award or touring, we're thinking about audiences. We're really thinking about bringing excellent work to audiences all across the Republic of Ireland. Other policies that feed into these guidelines we're about to dive into are paying the artist. So we don't set pay scales as part of our remit as the Arts Council. We don't, set rates for commercial enterprise, or we don't interfere in commercial enterprise. However, we do encourage fair rates of pay, fair remuneration, and all of that kind of thing for artists. We also have our equality, human rights, diversity policy and strategy, which does feed in to our guidelines as well, particularly in the area of access and access costs. And then our place, space, and people policy, which is a spatial policy, which commits to bringing high quality arts engagement opportunities and performances to audience and participants all around the country, not just in central city hubs, for example. And all of these will feed into the guidelines that we're about to dive into. So the Project Award 2025, there's only one round for the Project Award in 2025. And here I'm just going to give you an introduction and maybe touch on some art form notes so you know which stream or which strand of the Project Award to apply underneath. To give you a little bit of insight into last year as well. Well, firstly, the Project Award supports the creation and presentation of new work to audiences in the Republic of Ireland in partnership with festivals, arts centres, venues, and local authorities. In 2024, there was one round of the Project Award. We had 34 applications under Circus, Street Performance and Spectacle, requesting a total of 1.36 million. 9 applications were funded with a budget of 393,000. So to set expectations here, 25% of the applications we funded were recommended for funding, that we only had 30% of the available budget. The budget that we're probably going to be working with, there is a huge campaign starting now where we're hoping that government will increase the budgets to the Arts Council, because we're seeing very high levels of competition across all of the art forms. But in particular, we're really seeing it in our sector. There's been a lot of work in recent years investing in the artist through Agility Award, and also for the last five years plus, we've been heavily investing in the infrastructure for this sector, for Circus, building infrastructure such as the Irish Area Creation Centre, various residency programs, and different festivals like the National Circus Festival and Spree Festival. And through all of these and their mentorship programs and all of that, there is quite a strong offering from our sector, and we're seeing that in our applications, really excellent quality applications coming in, which unfortunately makes it very competitive. So our working budget at the moment is about 400,000. We are considering probably reducing our budget for the bursary award, which supports artists, to increase our project award offering, because we've invested so much into bursary in the past and into Agility. However, that's not absolutely certain yet, and we don't know what our budget is for next year, and we won't know until December when government releases the budget. So just to give you a bit of try and kind of lift the veil on it a little bit, and so that you can see that really sometimes it does just come down to these statistics, and we just do not have the budget to fund everything that is worthy of funding. Okay. So moving on a little bit then to an art form note if you're unsure what to apply underneath. So the Circus Project Award is open to circus artists and companies working in both the contemporary and the traditional circus sectors in Ireland who wish to develop new work for presentation with partners to Republic of Ireland audiences. For street performance and spectacle, street performance refers to live outdoor performance, typically in a street, public space, or site-responsive context, usually presented free of cost. It can include circus, spectacle, theatre, magic, comedy, puppetry, or dance. Street performance can take the form of a walkabout act, a circle show, or a pop-up intervention that engages audiences unexpectedly as they go about their daily lives. Spectacle refers to high-impact performance, typically occurring in an outdoor setting in a festival or parade context, often involving floats, pageants, large-scale structures, puppetry, processional performance, and themed group ensembles that integrate costume, dance, theatre, and music through a theme. So these definitions. We did a piece of research in the development of our street performance and spectacle policy, and we proposed definitions, and just to say that these received over 80% strongly agree from respondents to our survey. So we're moving forward with these definitions. The purpose of this is not to restrict or confine what these art forms are. It's actually the opposite. It's to ensure that everyone who's practicing in this area recognizes that they are art forms, recognizes that they are eligible to apply into this portfolio. And we're not completely restricted about that either. There is some looseness on it. We'll just expand on it in a moment. But for example, we renamed from street art to street performance, as there was a lot of confusion from mural artists and visual artists working in the outdoor space who define themselves as street art. So for visual arts, mural and street artists should apply via the Visual Arts Project Award. Musicians should apply via the Music Project Award as well. Just another note I want to share on young people, children, and education. If your project is youth circus focused, or you wish to develop and deliver ambitious and original projects with and for children and young people, you should apply via the YPCE Project Award. Arts participation, if your project has social circus or initiatives in the fields of arts participation, i.e. participatory, collaborative, community and socially engaged arts practice as its primary focus, you should apply via the Arts Participation Project Award, which supports proposals from professional artists or organizations that wish to collaborate artistically with non-arts professionals to co-create works. So if you're unsure about which of these you fall under, if you are a circus artist who's creating work specifically for the street and specifically for audiences on the street, and you're working with a festival perhaps to do that, you would perhaps fall underneath street performance and spectacle. We do recognize, and that's why our team is kind of shared and our budget is shared. We recognize there's a big crossover between these. So you don't need, I wouldn't stress if you're not sure if it's circus or street performance, if it's one or the other, it's going to be going to the same panel. If it is ultimately shortlisted, it will be going to the same panel, and it'll be competing against, circus and street performance will be competing against each other. So you don't need to worry too much about which of these you fall under. As I say, we do recognize the crossovers between them. These definitions, particularly the street performance and spectacle ones, are just to open up our gates in a way to practitioners who maybe didn't feel that they were eligible to apply. Okay. So, and I saw a question come in there, but we'll come back to that later on if I haven't already addressed the answer to it. So a note on secondary art forms. In your application, if you apply via the Circus Project Award, you'll be given an option to select other art forms. If you do that, I'd be very careful in doing that. If, for example, you are making what you feel is a circus theatre show, if you select theatre as a secondary art form, we will be sending your application to the theatre team to write a secondary assessment. And if the theatre elements or the collaborators, if there needs to be very strong theatre collaborators, people with established careers and who are considered to be strong collaborators, there will be an assessment coming back on that. So I wouldn't just select it because it has an element of it. If it is a core element of your project and you're working with a director from the theatre sector, for example, then select theatre and you'll be given a secondary assessment on it. Similarly for other art forms. So while applicants may select other art forms as being relevant to their application, the application will be assessed by the team responsible for the chosen primary art form, which may, in certain circumstances, ask for a secondary assessment from that team. So just so that you're aware of why that is there and what that is. Okay, so now buckle in because we're about to deep dive into the application guidelines. This will be very text heavy, but the purpose of doing this is so that it helps you to understand some of these guidelines in a more thorough way, but also I completely understand what it's like reading big walls of text in a document, and it can be hard to really understand what some of the phrasing and jargon actually means. So that's my purpose for doing this. Also remember, this will be recorded, so you can come back and watch this afterwards if you like. The purpose of the award is to support high-quality standalone initiatives that specifically deliver a presentation to or an engagement with an audience or public. So like I'd said before, the bursary award, for example, or the agility award is about developing the artist's individual practice. What we really want to do with the project award is bring excellent work to audiences. This is all about the audiences. The closing date is Thursday, 25th of July at 5:30. I highly recommend that you do not actually consider that the closing date, that maybe you consider the closing date the 24th or the 23rd, and you get your application in way ahead of time. There is always a big rush very close to the closing time on the Thursday, and sometimes there can be IT issues or formatting issues with your documents, and you really don't want that stress. So I would really urge you to consider the closing date to be that Tuesday or Wednesday. The maximum amount we have to award for an individual project is €50,000. We have had requests and really good cases made for us increasing this, but unfortunately our budget is so small that we just cannot. We cannot strand it or have increased amounts like perhaps they do in theatre or music or other art forms. So unfortunately that is our amount, and that is the maximum that we can offer. You can apply under Circus, or you can apply under Street Performance and Spectacle. As I mentioned already, if shortlisted, it will be going to the same panel. So if your work kind of crosses those two, just pick the one maybe that aligns the most with the objectives and priorities, which we're about to get to now in a moment. It's open to professional artists and organisations, and the funding decision is made by peer panel. As in the funding decision is not made by our team or our assessor or anyone internal to the Arts Council. The funding decision is made by a panel of peers from the sector. I'll describe that in a little bit more detail later on in the presentation. So the process the guidelines, you can find them at the artscouncil.ie. Just click on available funding, then you'll find the Circus Project Award and the Street Performance and Spectacle Project Award. I really suggest you go through the proper route on the website so that you're getting the most up-to-date guidelines, because there's been project awards in previous years, but things in the guidelines will be different. Different parts that we're going to look at: objectives and priorities, who can't apply, what can you apply for, what can you not apply for, what supporting material you must include, eligibility criteria, how to make your application, and how we assess it. The purpose of this, so now we're going to split, this is just for the next few slides, we're going to split them into Circus and Street Performance and Spectacle, and then we'll come back to everything together. But just to consider, there are different priorities for each of the art forms, and you will be assessed under how well you meet the objectives and priorities. So we'll go into this first for Circus. The purpose of the award is to support high quality, standalone initiatives that specifically deliver a presentation to or an engagement with an audience or public. Potential Circus proposals could be those that, they don't have to be this, but they could be, for example, projects that allow artists and companies to engage in high quality collaborations with professionals such as dramaturgs, choreographers, producers, directors, set designers, and costume designers to develop work that is new to both the artists involved and to audiences, to enable artists to create work that changes their own concepts of current working practices, creating new high quality work for Irish audiences, and those that enable artists to create work that pushes the boundaries of circus practice in Ireland. And what we mean by that is really pushing the boundaries of circus practice. So the discipline of circus, the practice of your particular skill or discipline, and pushing the boundaries and elevating that. Which leads into, this is new. So we've explicitly called it out because it's something we really want to nurture and develop in Ireland, is excellent skill level, circus skill level. So I'm aware we have a lot of contemporary circus practitioners, but what we really want to prioritize in our project award for Circus is excellent circus skill. Okay, that's the top priority in it. So we've identified the following, but the first being projects that demonstrate excellent skill level in a variety of circus disciplines. And when we say that as well, we want to support all types of circus practice in Ireland. That includes aerial, acrobatics, object manipulation, equilibristics, as well as physical theatre, and then in other cases as well, we also in the sector, we do have work with animals and work in stunt as well, but we really across the board. So we've had very strong offerings from certain disciplines in the past, and we really want to see that spread across all of the disciplines that are practiced in Ireland, and or high quality cross-disciplinary collaborations. So what that means is if you're an acrobat, for example, and you wish to work with a choreographer, what is of greater priority is that that choreographer is very well established, has a very strong track record, and that the quality of that collaboration is excellent. Okay, so as I say, and I'm really going to kind of nail on this, we really want to focus on high skill level, excellent skill level, a variety of circus disciplines, and that your collaborations are excellent also. So if you're working with a theatre director, that collaboration is of an excellent standard, and we'll probably be having a theatre secondary come in on that to verify it. So, and this is what the panel will be informed of as well when making the decisions. So then other priorities for Circus Project Award are projects that create opportunities to extend the life of the work by securing a broad range of performances within the finite parameters of the project and its budget. There's only 50,000. You're not going to be able to do 20 shows with that, but we want to be able to create work that can create its own opportunities for future programming and touring as well. Projects that reflect a strong relationship and/or level of investment between the artist and the project partner and lead to high quality production values for the completed work. So we want to see that if you're working with a festival or an arts centre, that they haven't just simply said, oh yeah, we'll let them put on their show, that they're really showing either through in-kind offers of space or rehearsal space or promotional or marketing support, that they're really committed to you and this project and this show getting to their audiences. So we want to see that reflected in the application. And projects that have the potential to be enjoyed widely in our communities, public spaces, and in dedicated venues and centres across the country. So this is connected to our spatial policy, which I mentioned earlier. So we really want to be able to offer meaningful access and engagement with the arts that reaches new and diverse audiences so that we're bringing work to people where they are, not necessarily just in these central city hubs. Not to say that presenting work in central city hubs is not also welcome. It is, absolutely. But these are our overall priorities for circus work. So now to kind of pivot over to street performance and spectacle. And as well, if you're wondering which one to apply under, I would consider these objectives and priorities and what your work is aiming to do or what your work is aiming to bring to audiences, for which one you should apply underneath if it's relevant to both. So again, to support high quality standalone initiatives that specifically deliver a presentation to or an engagement with an audience or public. And potential proposals could be those that allow artists and companies within these art forms to work with professionals such as dramaturgists, choreographers, producers, directors, and costume designers to develop work that's both new to the artists and to audiences, and that involve original artistic ideas, enabling artists to engage with new or experimental collaborative partnerships, leading to high quality, accessible public performance. The strategic priorities for street performance and spectacle in this project award round are for projects that create opportunities for increased engagement in the arts by communities and promote good practice in audience development and public engagement. So if you're intending to apply under street performance and spectacle, this is very important for you, and I would just make a note for you to pay attention later on when we're talking about the supporting material and the audience planning piece of that, which we'll come to in a little bit. You really need to be able to show that very strongly in your application. Also, projects that demonstrate the capacity to deliver ambitious work of high public impact and visibility. For spectacle and street performance, it doesn't have to be free, but in this sector, work is often presented free to audiences and has a huge reach and brings high quality work to large amounts of audiences. So that is a strategic priority for us going forward as well, to continue that practice in Ireland. But it's not obligatory. If you're doing site responsive, for example, or something, and ticketing it is part of your plan or your budgeting, then that is also eligible. Projects that demonstrate the capacity to deliver ambitious work. Sorry, did I just repeat that one? Excuse me. Projects that reflect a strong relationship and/or level of investment between the artist and company and project partners, similar to the circus one. So again, that your festival or your arts, your local authority is very, very committed to that and maybe investing some financial support or other in-kind support, that's shown very clearly. Projects that present innovative artistic creations through high quality cross-disciplinary collaboration. So we know street performance and spectacle is often cross-disciplinary. So those collaborators should be high quality, or the artistic rationale that they're presenting needs to be very compelling. Excuse me. And then the final one, again, that it has a wide spatial spread, that it has the potential to be enjoyed widely in our communities and public spaces, real and virtual, and in dedicated venues and centres across the country. So we really want to be, particularly with street performance and spectacle, where we're not necessarily restricted by venues, that we are thinking about programming this work in communities and areas that maybe wouldn't traditionally have access to this work. Okay, so now everything is going to be across the two art forms. So this award is open to professional artists and organizations working in the area of circus and/or street performance and spectacle. We define a professional artist as an individual who identifies themselves and is recognized by their peers as a practicing professional artist. The applicant does not have to make their living exclusively through their arts practice. We know that is not possible necessarily in our sector all of the time. So that is not a restriction on it, but you do have to have a level of professional practice or a track record of some level to be eligible. We tend to be pretty lenient on that one. That's if we're going to make someone ineligible, it's usually not necessarily around that. If you've gone through this process and gone through this clinic and made an application, you probably have some level of professional practice. So to be eligible to apply, applicants must be resident in the Republic of Ireland. We may accept applications from outside the Republic of Ireland. In this case, you must detail in your application form how your proposal would benefit the arts in the Republic of Ireland, and we would need to be satisfied with your explanation. Also, the project award only funds work that's to be presented to audiences in the Republic of Ireland. So your work would need to be presented to Irish audiences. Who is the applicant? So the applicant is the person or organization that will receive any grant offered and who will be required to accept the terms and conditions of that grant. Any grant offered will only be paid into a bank account held in the name of the applicant. So all documentation provided must be in the name of the applicant, the individual artist or organization. For example, if you apply to the Arts Council for funding under the name Maura DeBarra, then all documentation, including bank and tax details, must be in that name. Variations such as Mary Barry or Barry Studios are not acceptable. So this is just a kind of administrative point, but it has led to issues for applicants in the past. Who cannot apply? So applicants who are not eligible to apply include the following: organizations currently in receipt of funding under the following programs: strategic funding, arts centre funding, partnership funding, organizations or individuals in receipt of 2025 arts grants funding. Even though the involvement of such organizations as partners is welcome, right? And then also individuals who work on an ongoing basis with organizations funded through any of these programs. So that's what it says in the guidelines. I know in the past we've had queries about that one. So I have this little clarification point in here. So this refers to individuals who are full-time employees or full-time contractors with these organizations. So we're aware that many people might work with a number of these funded organizations on freelance basis, either as tutors or performers, but aren't full-time employed. If you are full-time employed by any of these organizations, either freelance or an employee, you are not eligible to apply. National cultural institutions or their council members directly funded by the Department of Tourism, Culture, Arts, Gaeltacht, Sports and Media cannot apply. Individuals or organizations that do not have a demonstrable, sorry, I always get that word wrong, demonstrable track record as professional artists or organizations are not eligible to apply. And that comes back into what is a professional artist. Individuals currently in undergraduate education, including those undertaking foundation courses, who will be during the period for which this award is offered. This one, sometimes people don't understand this one, but the reason for it is they're being subsidized by the government to complete that course. So there's a big rule about double funding things in government. So if you're as a citizen receiving funding to complete full-time or complete education, we can't be giving you funding to do an arts project as well. So that's why that stipulation is in place. And individuals seeking support towards fees for postgraduate, including unaccredited higher education or study, cannot apply. You cannot apply for the award both as an individual and as part of an organization. You cannot apply as for example, if you're the artistic director of X circus company, you cannot apply as an individual and as X circus company. That can't happen. And yeah, so if any of these are deemed to be the case, your application will be made ineligible and will not be assessed. What can you apply for? You may apply for up to 50,000. You're required to submit a detailed budget listing all items of income and expenditure related to your proposed project. So for the detailed budget, we don't have a specific template. Some of the other art form teams do. We have had very limited capacity with our team this year, and I actually had planned to put one in for our team, but we didn't get the chance to do it. So you're free to use your own budget template. If you're unsure how to go about it, I suggest maybe looking at the Dance Project Award, and there they have a dance budget. If you want to use that for guidance, you can. There is a theatre one as well, but it's kind of different. And Kira has worked on the theatre team, so she knows it's kind of different. So I wouldn't look at the theatre one. It's a bit there's too many specific things in it, but perhaps the dance one. But just in general, you can also look up online for budget templates, or perhaps connect with resource organizations in your sector or with other artists who've been successful in the past to give you some guidance about that. But ultimately, you can use your own budget template for it. The maximum amount you may request is the difference between the proposed expenditure and the proposed income you indicate in the budget. Proposed expenditure should include all fees for artists and technicians, etc., wages, technical costs, promotion and publicity costs, administrative costs, etc. Proposed income should include what you expect to receive from other funders, box office receipts, or program sales. Or in the case of street performance and spectacle, you may not have these because you're offering the work for free. So the cost, again, is the expenditure, what you intend to spend making the show, bringing the show to a location and presenting that show, and then minus any income. So that's the amount, and the maximum amount is 50,000. Proposed income should include what you expect to receive. Oh yeah, from other funders, I said that one already. It is also important to reflect all in-kind support in both income and expenditure. So reflecting the full and true value of your proposal. What this looks like is, for example, if an arts centre who I'm working with is giving me a week in their venue to prepare my show in advance, there is a cost. They might be giving it to me what appears to be for free, but there is a cost for them in doing that. So you outline what that cost is, but you put it in your expenditure and in your income, so it balances out. So that then shows the true cost of your project, right? So if the value is €1,000 for you to use that space for a week, you put that in your income, but you also put it in your expenditure. So it balances out and won't affect your total, but it's clearly there. Okay. You are asked to indicate income, expenditure, and amount requested at 3 stages during your application. On the detailed budget you submit, which is your choice how you choose to format that. Online, when you initiate the application through our online system, OLS, and then in section 3 of the application form, those 3 numbers must be exactly the same or your application will be ineligible. Make sure that the totals are the same on all 3. And again, that the amount requested equals the total expenditure minus the total income. Okay, this is new and this has changed somewhat. So I'm just, this is around access costs for participants with disabilities, okay? So if you, as an artist or as any of your team have access costs, that's considered participant or personal access costs. And then there are also what are now split and considered separately costs for making your work accessible to others, for example, ISL and things like that. And they're treated differently in your application. This is new, and this has come from operations and put into the guidelines. So hopefully I'm able to represent, this is new for me as well, so hopefully I'm able to represent this to you clearly. We'll talk a little bit more, but if you do have queries about access or you need access support actually to complete the application, that is available to you also, and I'll give information about that later on. So don't be too daunted by it right now. We'll help you through it, but I'll just try and explain what's in the guidelines for you here. So the Arts Council defines participants as those who express themselves creatively by taking part in artistic activities, right? That might be more, participants in this context might be more relevant to young people, children in education who are doing co-creation of projects, or in participatory arts, which is specifically about working with communities and non-artists, for example, or our arts and health and things like that. So they're participants. So in this context, we're really thinking about artists. The Arts Council is committed to making our funding programs and the work we fund accessible to everyone. The Arts Council takes the description of disability from Article 1 of the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which states, persons with disabilities include those who have long-term physical, mental, intellectual, or sensory impairments, which in interaction with various barriers may hinder their full and effective participation in society on an equal basis with others. You can include access costs within your application, and there are two types that you can apply for. One, participant or personal access costs. These costs should remove barriers for artists or members of your team, your production team, your technical team, or participants with disabilities who are delivering your proposal. Okay, one. And costs for making your work accessible to others, public access costs. Okay. What is important to note is number one, personal access costs can be applied for in addition to your 50,000. You can apply for, if you need, for example, if you have a member of your team or your production team or your technical team, for example, who needs a ramp for access to a venue or something like that, or if you're working in an outdoor space and you need to put in access routes or something along those lines for participants or artists or members of your team to deliver the proposal, those can be applied for in addition to your 50,000. So for example, I need 2,500 to put in some kind of ramps or ground coverings in an outdoor space so that my team member in a wheelchair can have access to the space, and you have a quote for that. That can be, you can apply then for 50,000 and 2,500 in addition to. Costs for making your work accessible to others should be included as part of your budget for your project and not in addition to the 50,000. This is a shift from previous years, where both were considered the same, but it was my understanding of the journey with this is that it was an experimental kind of learning process for us internally, and we simply don't have the budget to support all of the access costs for audiences, which were coming through from the various different art forms and their large scale work. So it's also a consideration that venues and festivals should be considering this as part of their mandatory costs as well. So just a little bit more information on the participant or personal access costs. These costs should remove barriers for artists or participants with disabilities who are delivering your proposal. For example, you, the main artists, individuals, groups, or organizations involved in your proposal, partners or collaborators, production staff, core staff, or key administrative personnel. Examples of support are, but not limited to, an ISL interpreter, services of an access support worker. And then a note, as I was saying, you can apply for these in addition to the maximum amount available for the award and include them in the total amount requested. Public access costs. We want to ensure that more people enjoy high quality arts experiences and that everyone can access and enjoy the work we fund. These are costs for making your work accessible to persons with disabilities and should be considered a normal part of your work and your project partner's work. Examples of access costs to make your work accessible to your audience may be having an ISL interpreter for your event or performance, using an audio description service, making your website compatible with screen readers, producing exhibition materials in other formats, such as in Braille or in audio. And again, these are across art forms, so not necessarily all relevant to our work. And a note, you need to include these costs in the total amount requested within the maximum amount available to the reward. Okay, so hopefully that's clear. There are two types of access costs, and also actually just to say as well, access does not mean get in costs. We've had confusion with that in the past. So access costs aren't about you getting your show into the venue. Access costs are about access for participants, artists, and audiences with disabilities. There's two types: personal or artist access costs, which can be applied for in addition to the total amount requested, and then audience access costs, which must be considered a normal part of your work and applied for within your budget underneath the maximum available amount of 50,000. So hopefully that's kind of clarified that a little bit. I hope I didn't confuse you more on it. But as I say, we have supports for that. So how to apply, we need to understand you're applying for access costs and how they meet your needs, the needs of your participants or your audience. If you include access costs in your proposal of any kind, you must show the costs in two separate lines where indicated within the application form. There's a line for personal participant, and then there's a line for public access. Whether you use the Arts Council budget templates or your own budget document, the two types of access costs must be shown separately within your budget. Okay? What may you not apply for? You may not apply for more than one project type award in any art form or arts practice in any one round of funding. For example, the same applicant cannot apply for Street Form Spectacle Project Award and a Theatre Project Award in the same round. Activities and costs that you may not apply for include the following major capital purchases, ongoing core costs for your organization. Activities or costs that don't fit the purpose of the award, as already outlined, excuse me, which is to present new work to audiences. Activities that are more suited to another award funded by the Arts Council, such as a bursary award, for example, or touring of existing work, or operated by other state agencies, such as Culture Ireland. Activities that have already taken place or will have commenced before the 1st of January 2025. If you apply for any of these, your application will be made ineligible. Excuse me. So just to continue, activities undertaken for charity fundraising purposes, for participation in a competition, or for primarily profit-making purposes are not eligible. Activities that have already been assessed by the Arts Council. So if you previously applied for something and you're applying for exactly the same thing, it will be made ineligible. Sorry, let me clarify that. If you applied previously and were eligible and your application was assessed and you were either shortlisted or not shortlisted, but you were not recommended for funding, you cannot apply for exactly the same thing again. This is again down to that double funding thing. A number of people are involved in the assessment of your application through our staff, our advisors, and then all the panelists who are brought in. So there is an investment by the Arts Council in assessing each individual application, and we cannot pay for that twice. That comes down to double funding. However, if you demonstrate that you've substantively developed your proposal since previously applying, so there has been some development in the idea, there's a change in project partners, there's revised dates, you've got new team members. If it's sufficiently developed in some way, that will be eligible. Or if you have been specifically advised by our team that you could reapply, then that is also eligible. But please bear in mind, if you were advised to reapply, it is not an indication of a successful outcome. It still needs to go through the whole process, and every application is assessed within the competitive context of the round within which it is submitted. So projects that solely involve the touring of existing productions is not eligible. That should be applied for under touring. And projects that are not centered on the creation of new artistic work to be presented to an audience or public. Okay, supporting material. So this is all detailed in the guidelines as well, but this will give you a high-level overview of it. Supporting material is material that is separate from and additional to your application form. This helps the person assessing your application to get a clearer understanding of your proposal. Please read what supporting material is required very carefully, and I do strongly advise you to go look through the guidelines after this clinic. This clinic is still here, but the guidelines are gospel. So if there's any queries or anything coming back afterwards, it's all about the guidelines. In order to be considered eligible, you must submit the following. You must have up-to-date CVs or biographies for each of the key artists involved in the project. Each of the key artists and team members involved in the project, including like producers and technicians, etc. A detailed budget separate from and in addition to the budgetary information in the application form itself. And as mentioned already, you could maybe look at the dance project award. It has a template there. We weren't able to get one up in time. But aside from that, you can, use your own budget template as well. This should set out all the individual costs and any projected income associated with the project. This must include proposed rates of pay for all personnel. Rates of pay should be realistic and commensurate with the practitioner's level of professional experience. And you will be assessed on this. The panelists who are members of the sector, people from the sector, will look and go, well, that's very high. That's very high for what that person is doing, either just in general or in comparison to the other applications, or they might say that's just not high enough. Usually a daily rate of anything under €200 comes under scrutiny. That is not an indication that 200 should be a standard daily rate, but if it's anything really below that in today's environment, it's really not considered feasible. And it will affect your feasibility score. But again, I would suggest you talk to the professionals you're working with. They will have established daily rates already, or also talk to people in your sector who you know, mentors that you have, and request, find out information and share information about rates. You also need to have letters or emails of support and/or copies of memorandums of understanding outlining details of the collaborations and confirming any commitments of income, either in cash or in kind. For example, if you're making a contemporary circus show and you're telling us that you're going to put it on in the Abbey for a week, we need a letter from the Abbey saying that they'll absolutely program this, right? So, and you'd be surprised, things have come in and there is no commitment or even knowledge with the project partner that this was set up. So you need to form a relationship with that delivery partner, whether it's your local authority for street performance and spectacle work, or it's a festival, or it's a venue, etc., etc. Okay, so the letters and emails of support or memorandums of understanding are from your project delivery partners. Okay, I just saw a question pop up there. From your team, it's just CVs or biographies. For your artists and production team, for example, your technicians, your riggers, not from the letters of support or for the project partners. But again, remember our strategic priorities are that the project partners are committed and invested to the work that you're doing. So this is where we can see that reflected and where our panelists can see that reflected. There's a difference from someone just saying, yeah, we'll program this in Fringe versus them saying, we love this, we really want to do it, we're giving them a week rehearsal space. There's a difference. And I'm not saying that's exactly what should be in the letters, but there's a difference in the level of commitment that's demonstrated in each of those letters. They're not just a box ticking exercise as well. We're thinking about quality and substance here. Video clips showing examples of recent work. This is really important, particularly for our assessor and our panelists who may not be familiar with your work. In the cases where the project proposal has a public outcome, a marketing and or dissemination and or engagement plan which outlines who the work is for and how they will be enabled or encouraged to engage with it. This is really important for street performance and spectacle. Really important. You must have it for Circus also if you're in a venue or wherever it may be. But for street performance and spectacle, one of our strategic priorities is that this is very well considered and that you've really thought about how you're going to engage communities in your work and how you're going to bring it to them. So you need to have one of those three, right? You need to have either a marketing plan for how you're going to promote the show, ticketing, posters, all that kind of thing, or a dissemination plan. That's kind of more so if it's like, yeah, a dissemination plan or an engagement plan. How are you going to engage your audience with this work? So for support with these, there's some links here. And also just to say, we are going to send these slides around afterwards as well to everyone who registered. But on our website, you can see under the strategic development section, there's a public engagement section. In there, there's lots of resources, there's information, there's guides on how to create this audience engagement plan. Again, the project award is for bringing really high quality work to audiences. This is about the audiences. And you really, really, really need to be thinking about them in how you create your show. And you're seeking public money, you're seeking public investment of up to 50,000 to bring high quality work to audiences. So how you bring it to the audiences and who those audiences are is really, really important for us to know. Also, street performance and spectacle is quite unique in this way. It's such a priority for us, but at the same time, we don't have ticketing in many cases. So we can't actually see or report or measure our audiences in the same ways. So I'd like to steer you towards a really excellent resource on the Irish Street Arts, Circus and Spectacle Network's website called the Audience Aware Street Arts Handbook. Okay, so combined with that, you should be able to put together a really good picture of how you intend to engage with your audiences. So in order to assess the volume of applications that we typically receive in a timely manner, we cannot review any supporting materials other than those listed above. Also, a note that I like to make, because I've often seen this be very successful with panels, is where applicants put all of their supporting material together in a single dossier, right? Maybe a PDF document with imagery, links to your videos, your budgets, your CVs, put it all together in a visual way that tells the story of the project you're proposing, but also tells the story of you as an artist and represents the quality of your work. So we suggest putting it all together with a clear table of contents so that our operations teams can quickly see that you have everything you need and can be made eligible, and that it demonstrated to your panelists. One thing I will say though, try and be, I know we're asking for a lot, but at the same time, try and be succinct. Try and keep it simple and as short. Don't put in unnecessary information. I know the panel, our last project award, they received one that I think it had like 90 pages or something in the PDF, and it was just too much. I think like there was unnecessary information, brochures for the venue and various different things like that. So really only put in what you need to put in as well, and keep it clear and concise, and that people can easily see that you have a very considered proposal and that you're an established artist. If that helps, you are of course welcome to upload everything as individual documents as well. But I find that it can be very well received by panels when it's put together in a kind of a brochure or dossier as well in PDF forms. You could just make it in a Word, whatever tools you use, you can make it in a Google Doc or make it in a Word and then save it as a PDF, or you could make it in some other design tool and save it as a PDF and submit it that way. Okay, so in certain circumstances, additional material required. If you're seeking access costs to support work, which we already discussed, that's separate. You need to have a document. Please provide a document outlining these costs and outlining how they've been arrived at. So if you got quotes, for example, for ISL, as sometimes happens in Circus, if your proposal involves working with animals, you must provide a copy of your animal welfare protection policy and procedures. Okay, there's more information about this on the Circus page of the Arts Council website. For applications involving children and young people, such as the YPCE Project Award, or if you're doing co-creation with young people under the age of 18, you need to, all individuals and organizations providing these services to children and young people need to have suitable child protection policies and procedures in place, Garda vetting, etc. And same if you're working with vulnerable adults, you must indicate this in the application form. You must acknowledge you familiarized yourself with and adhere to the national policy and procedures on safeguarding vulnerable persons at risk of abuse. So these would more so fall under participatory arts or arts participation or young people, children and education. If you do not submit all of the required supporting material, your application will be deemed ineligible. More points in eligibility here. So your application will be deemed ineligible and will not be assessed and will not be shortlisted and will not go to panel if any of the following are true. You miss the application deadline. So like I really strongly suggest you get your application in a day or two early, just in case there's some kind of issue. You do not submit a completed application form through the Arts Council online services. An application form attached as a supporting document will not be accepted. You fail to complete all of the sections in the application form relevant to your proposal. You cannot apply as set out in 1.2 to 1.4 of the guidelines who can and cannot apply, which we've covered here. You apply for an amount of funding greater than the maximum allowed for within the award to which you're applying. Our maximum is 50,000, not including personal access costs, as we've already discussed. You apply for an activity or a purpose that you cannot apply for, as set out in section 1.6. You fail to provide all mandatory supporting materials, which we've just covered. Your application is better suited to another funding program offered by the Arts Council or by another funding agency. Now, hopefully after this clinic, you should know very clearly if your application is for the project award or if it's an artist development award, it should go into the bursary or the agility award. The project award is for the creation of work that is new for audiences in partnership with collaborators such as festivals, venues, local authorities, etc. Whew. Okay, so we're coming closer to the end now. What I've done here is I realized in previous clinics and through conversations with applicants and things, I wanted to go into a bit more detail about the assessment criteria. Okay, we've really lent on the eligibility and the priorities in the past, but I think sometimes it's unclear to people who maybe receive feedback that the panel thought they weren't as strong in one area as other applicants, what that actually means. So I'm just going to go into that a little bit more. Applications are assessed in a competitive context and with consideration of the application form and the supporting materials submitted. All applications are assessed against the below 3 criteria. One is artistic merit. Now, I always phrase this slightly differently as artistic rationale, because so how do you, overall, who are you as an artist? Who is your company as an artist? What have you done in the past? And what are you doing now? Why is this new? And why is this elevating the art form? And is this bringing something excellent to audiences? We're really, really leaning into excellence in circus discipline and high quality production values for audiences. We have a very limited budget. And so what we do fund, we want to be spectacular and we want to be really transformative for audiences. So what this then reads in the guidelines as the assessment of artistic merit focuses on the applicant and on those involved in the project, as well as on the nature of the proposed arts activities, and includes consideration of the quality of the idea and the proposed arts activity. Quality also, for example, in circus is going to apply to circus discipline, circus skill. And in spectacle, for example, we'll talk about the quality of the makers and the artists involved in the project. The track record of the applicant and the artistic personnel involved as evidenced in their CVs and other supporting material. The potential of the applicant and the artistic personnel as evidenced in the applicant. Oh, no, is that the same one? Sorry. The art form, arts practice context in which the activity is proposed. The ambition, originality, and competency demonstrated in the proposal, and how the application demonstrates innovation, experimentation, and collaboration. The art form, arts practice context often comes in as a big one as well. When panels have to make these tough decisions, they are thinking, well, wow, nobody else is doing this though in Ireland, for example. It's been done internationally, but nobody is doing this in Ireland. We need to bring this to audiences. That tends to come into it. How they meet the objectives and priorities of the award, which we've gone through in a lot of detail up above, and they're separate for circus and separate for street performance and spectacle, and that's 33% of how you're assessed is around that piece. So you could be incredibly strong with the artistic rationale, artistic merit piece, your feasibility could be excellent, but you're not aligning very well with what the objectives and priorities, the strategic priorities are. So unfortunately, you might fall down there. And then feasibility, I think this can be a bit of a vague word, but what this really comes down to is like your budget, your timeline, your project partners. Is it rock solid? If we invest €50,000 of public taxpayers' money into your project, is it going to happen? Is it going to be good? Are people going to be paid well? Are we taking into consideration safe to create and all of those kind of things? Is it going to be a good working environment for all of your project team? So again, this comes into the track record of the personnel involved in managing, administering, and delivering the project, the extent to which the applicant demonstrates the provision of equitable conditions and remuneration for participating artists, the extent of involvement or commitment of identified project partners, the budget, other sources of income. So again, we can only give up to 50,000, but perhaps you have another local authority who can invest a bit more into it and all of those kind of things. The availability of and access to other resources and the proposed timetable or schedule. And again, we have to remember we only have 50,000 in here. And what we're asking for is quite a lot, really high production values, really high quality artists, fair rates of pay, all of that kind of thing. So the project award, you must present to an audience. Maybe you're presenting 2 shows, 3 shows out of this at a festival, maybe a course the weekend or whatever it might be. But one show is enough, but you may have a broader tour secured within the constraints. So, you know, you don't have to do 10, 20 shows with this. It's actually not possible with the budget that we have available. But hopefully the type of work that you would create would present opportunities for you for booking and for touring either internationally or nationally in the future. Okay, so this is how the process works for those who aren't aware. We receive the applications, operations do an eligibility check. So that's why it's important to have that table of contents in your PDF so they know everything is there. Advisors and or staff, so in this case, our advisor, Adam, will complete written assessments of the applications based on the criteria, and he'll recommend an application as shortlisted or not shortlisted. Those will be sent to our team. We'll review them. We tend to err on the side of shortlisting for panel to really give the decision, because we want to make sure we have an unbiased voice in our decision and recommendation processes. So we tend to put as many as possible. If it's eligible, if it's shortlisted, it's put into panel. So a peer panel then reviews all shortlisted applications and makes the decision. Who are peer panels? We'll look at it a bit more in a second, but basically peer, I think I've seen a couple of people on the call here who have sat in as peer panelists in the past. Before I was in this role, when I was working in the sector as an artist and an arts manager, I sat on a panel as well. So it's people from the sector, people who know the sector, and we try to have a diverse group of panelists who come from circus and street performance and spectacle, from producers to artists. They're sent all of the applications. that are shortlisted. They review through all of them, and then they come together on a day, which is chaired by a member of the council. And they are told, they go through each application, they discuss them against the strategic priorities and all of those kind of things. And then ultimately they have a restricted budget. So they are asked um, to give a score based on one of these statements. So score A is 10 points, and that is must fund. So each individual panelist then can give a score for each of the applications. Must fund is 10 points. Should fund is 8 points. Could fund is 6, and not a priority is 4. So they each give a score for each of the applications, and then that's averaged up, and then there's a cutoff where the budget line is. And it's kind of that clinical. We then they'll issue feedback from the panel. In majority of cases, it's a single line that says we just didn't have enough money. The competitive context, it wasn't recommended for funding within the competitive context, and that just is how your application stacks up against the other applications within that context. It tends to be broadly spread with an 80%, 20% circus to street performance and spectacle ratio, maybe 70-30. And which reflects the ratio of applications we get in. We usually get 60 to 80% circus, and then maybe like 20 to 40% street performance and spectacle is what we receive, and that tends to be reflected in the recommendations. So it's a very fair process. We always get this feedback from panelists that it's a very fair process. We will be doing panelist recruitment in the coming months, so we'll make sure that all of you receive a communication around that, because I really do want as many people as possible who are applying for funding to have a chance to sit on a panel, because it can and really help them understand the process. So then after panel, decisions are communicated in writing. You'll be sent either a single line of feedback. Well, you'll be sent a single line of feedback from the panel. And then if you request further feedback, what we do is send you on your assessment, which is what was completed at the shortlisting stage. So the length of time it'll take us to make these decisions will depend on how many applications we receive. And in general, depending on the volume, it can take anywhere between 12 to above 15 weeks. A couple more notes on the peer panel process. They're made up of artists and sector professionals and made funding decisions for key funding programs such as the bursary and the project award. There are other cross art form panels for things like touring and other programs, but the people on our panel will be from our sector. Panels assist in maintaining standards of quality and ensuring transparency, and also reducing bias institutionally here. So that's about keeping all of those different voices in and trying to keep it as fair and open as possible. Peer panel members use their expertise to assess, score, and make decisions in line with the published criteria. And in the panel, we'll also, the meeting, one of my roles in it is to just review with them the strategic priorities after they've initially reviewed all of the applications. So the strategic priorities we outlined earlier on will be, again, reinforced there. And you can see who peer panelists were for previous rounds of the bursary. If you go to the Who We Funded area at the Arts Council website, you can look at the Project Award 2024, for example, and you can see Circus or Street Performance and Spectacle. You can see who as a company or individual was awarded funding, and you can also see the big list of panelists on the side as well. And I think the list of panelists is probably for all of the art forms, but you'll likely recognize names from your sector in there, and they were the ones who were on our panel. Whoa, okay, we're on the home stretch now. Thank you all for sticking with me. I know there's a lot of information here, but I really want to get this out there into the sector for people to have a thorough understanding. So we're on the home stretch now. How to apply. Access supports. So if you need extra help with your application, not around the content or the artistic side, but with using the systems, with if you have issues with dyslexia or using technology or anything like that, and you would like any help, you can reach out to our access officer through the information provided here. And I would request, if you are going to seek this, that you do this as soon as possible, not in the week before. So if you think you might need a little bit of help, you're very overwhelmed by all of this, then please do reach out. How to make your application. So if you're a first-time applicant, today you need to register on the OLS, and it can take up to 5 days because it's done manually by our records team. If you are not already registered on our online services system, do it as soon as we end this clinic, please, because that will be a delay. So I can't stress that enough. So you register with the Arts Council online services on our website. They're made through the online services tool. You must have an account to make an application, so please do that today. You'll need to use a computer or a laptop. Our online services website does not work on phones or tablets. Uh, Unfortunately, you need to have Microsoft Word or Open Office Writer installed on your computer. I know a lot of people are Mac users. I'm a personal Mac user myself. So you need to make sure you either have a Mac-friendly version of Word or Open Office Writer, or that you're able to export your application form into that. I actually don't even think it'll open in the native Mac software. So you have to have Open Office Writer, which is an open source document word processor. The application form is formatted in such a way that the Arts Council can extract information from the form for assessment purposes and running reports. So it's very important that you type inside the grey boxes in that form and that you do not delete them or type outside of them. If you do this, the form will not upload properly. Yeah, there's more. You can look into this in the application form, but more just putting up here to kind of draw your attention to it. There are certain acceptable file formats for things. So if you're giving examples of previous work, you want to give video or imagery, you can give them as individual files. Again, you can also put those URLs in an individual document, or as we were saying earlier, do a kind of master PDF that includes all of your information, and you can include URL links as well in that. So standalone supporting materials such as CVs and letters of support must be uploaded as separate documents. This is in the guidelines, but our team will accept a combined dossier, and most teams will, a combined dossier with everything in one. Okay, so as I've said already, but again, try and keep it only what you need to have there, the really important information. General advice. Do not assume that the assessors, the team, or the panelists will know you or your work. Treat each application as if it was your first. Okay. Several people will be involved in making a decision about your application. So be really clear, get the ideas across, get your previous work across, and keep it simple, be concise. Make sure it's clear why you were doing this and why you were working with people you're working with. That kind of comes into your artistic rationale. Try not to slip into imitating our language or jargon and losing your individual artistic voice. Okay, you don't need to speak like a philosopher. You don't need to speak like a public servant. This is how our documents are put together, but it's really about you, your work, what your vision is, and what you want to bring to audiences and what value you see in that. So try not to lose that. Always relate your proposal back to the priorities and objectives, like I've really kind of hammered home with them earlier on. They're in the guidelines as well and in this presentation. And then have someone you know, whether an artist or family member or whatever it is, have someone you know read through your application. Because there might be, formatting or spelling or maybe you've repeated something. Sometimes you really, when you're in a document for so long, sometimes you kind of need to step back away from it and have someone else look over it. That just might be helpful for you. Common mistakes: not reading the guidelines, not registering on OLS in time. Again, do that right after this clinic if you're not already registered. Leaving it too late and missing the deadline. So don't use the final day as your actual deadline. If you need to give yourself a fake deadline, do it. Not uploading the required supporting material. Reading an older set of guidelines, always look at the most recent ones. Not relating the application to the objectives and priorities. And not attending art form clinics. So you're already doing pretty well. You need more help around the technical side of things. There is a lot of support information available. There's a video guide on how to make an application on YouTube. You can contact online services if you're having issues with the system, all that kind of thing. If you have a query about your application that's related to an art form team, you can find staff and advisor contact information on our website. But if you have a question that's maybe not been covered here or you want to discuss, we can't discuss the contents of your application really, but we can discuss things in high level. We can't give you advice or guidance on how to frame your ideas or how to frame your application. So please don't request that of us. We can't do that. But what we can just give you general support, particularly around eligibility. What we really want is for all of our applications to be eligible if possible. So if you have any queries at all about that, you can reach out to us. CSPS@artscouncil.ie, Circus, Street Performance and Spectacle, will come into our team. We're both part-time, so we're not always online. So that's why we direct you to to that particular email. And then for the other art form teams, for example, if you are a youth circus practitioner and you want to see if it's actually YPCE, you should be applying under, or you do social circus or community engaged co-creation work and spectacle and street performance, and you want to apply under arts participation, you can find their information there. I will be sharing this presentation and we will be sharing it afterwards as a PDF, and this is recorded and this will be put up on our website. Also to say that right now, I think they're doing it at exactly the same time. YPCE and Arts Participation are also doing clinics for their project awards, and they will also be recorded and put up on our website also. So that's it from me. Thank you for sticking around. I know there's a lot of information in there, but that's all in the guidelines. And so what I just really wanted to do was to kind of put it all up and talk through it a little bit and maybe help it soak in, and it should help you with your application. But ultimately, it's incredibly competitive in our art form at the moment across all of our funding programs. And I know how passionate all of you are about your work. And it's very hard to hear, but sometimes the if it's shortlisted and if it's brought through to panel, our team strongly feel that it's worthy of being funded. But we really have restricted budgets right now. We're hoping there'll be an increase in that, and the quality of work is absolutely excellent. So what we're seeing in the last project for 2024, Project Around, it was, you know, we had a 1 in 4 chance of being recommended for funding. And we're seeing even higher competitive rates across some of our other programs. Agility, for example, we don't have the final decisions yet, but it's looking like 20% success rate for the Agility Award. And our last bursary award was about 25% success rate. So just want you to know that. And that's as well why I wanted to dig into the assessment criteria and things a little bit more, and how the feedback and things are sent out to you, so that might shed some light on it for you. But we're going to wrap up the recording piece now, and we'll open it up to questions.